is really exciting. If we are, let's just make sure that everything's running great. Yeah, welcome to Molo Molo African Tech Stories. We are definitely live, our first live show, which is really exciting for a lot of us, including myself. Right, I'm busy setting up everything here, which is really exciting. But really exciting to be live, and of course, awaiting all of our esteemed guests that hopefully will be joining us soon. But yeah, welcome to Molo Molo African Tech Stories. My name is Dr. Paulin Kantue, and together we'll be discovering the fascinating stories of tech innovators and champions that are shaping Africa's future. Today's live session is a Q&A session, and excitingly so because it's our first live session. And fundamentally, we want to hear from you. We want to understand some of the questions you might have. And if you do not have the link, let me know. We will just check if on LinkedIn we are also live. So let me just have a look. I think we should also be live on LinkedIn. So it's really exciting. But yeah, so I think we are just going live as we speak on LinkedIn. All right. Okay, so we are definitely live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube. And now we are recording through Riverside. This is a bit of an operation, I must be honest. This is really something very interesting. All right, so we are definitely live, and we definitely will have a couple of things that we will be going through today. If some of you haven't seen the episodes that we've aired about a week ago, last week, it was actually a personal story, right? So I decided to get all personal. I was speaking to a colleague today at work, and I realized it's not easy for a lot of us to speak about our failures, about our, just the things that we really struggle. I think sometimes we forget that failures are the same as wounds, right? If you don't deal with them, they haven't really healed. And oftentimes when you actually bring them up, it really makes you realize that, man, this still hurts, and different failures are different, and it's all dependent on what actually happened or what triggered the failure and what the consequence of that failure is. But it's good, it's healthy to speak about how we failed and some of the things that we had to do because of that failure or the consequences of that failure. And all of us have experienced failure, so it is something that's quite important for us to speak about. Essentially, last episode was all about that, right? It was all about failure. It was all about understanding, okay, how do I move on from here? How do I figure out what do I do? So we are definitely live, and this is really exciting for a lot of us to have all of you just being part of this show, and I do think we will have a great time. So in terms of protocol, like I said, it's my first live session, right? I haven't done this before, and so it's we'll see how it goes. I think I'm just excited to be able to bring this to both YouTube Live and to Instagram Live, right? It's this is essentially what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to achieve a live session on both platforms that will allow us to at least share with our communities. We have a growing community on LinkedIn. Yay! Thank you so much for all those who have joined our LinkedIn page, who are following our, I would say, updates on a weekly basis, a daily basis, and what we are trying to achieve and some of the lessons we are learning. And it's very exciting. And of course, we have quite an active, but also quite difficult to grow audience on YouTube. And of course, the audio platforms. So we are on Spotify, we are on Google Podcasts, soon to be YouTube Podcast, I believe, Apple, and of course, all the other specific radio stations that, or at least podcast stations that we definitely broadcast through the RSS feed. So, yeah, Molo Molo African Tech Stories is essentially everywhere, to your convenience, whether you want to hear it through audio, whether you want to hear it through video. Potentially, we will think about whether we will turn this live into an audio format. Let's just see how it goes. The amazing thing about us partnering with Riverside is that we are able to decide, right, and really make a final call at the end. And at the end of the day, it's really all about making sure that we are basically making this video available to everybody. So just give us a shout out if you're able to find this video, and of course the audio in the specific formats. What does it sound like? I'm getting a lot of feedback from different people, from colleagues. Really exciting to know that some of my colleagues are listening to the Molo Molo podcast. It was not intended, so it's a really, really good surprise to know that people are interested in hearing what Molo Molo has to say, what I have to say, but what the guests have to say, all about Africa. And so, as a precursor, I would like to also set a few things straight so that at least it's clear in everybody's minds what Molo Molo means, but also what we are trying to achieve, right? So, and I've been asked this question quite a few times. So, Molo Molo is all about Africa, right? I think that's the first step. But Africa not from a visit Africa in terms of holiday, but Africa in terms of its potential. Africa in terms of us learning from the people who call Africa home, from the people who call Africa their first love, from the people that want Africa to change. And it's not just about a specific skin color. And you will see in the next few podcasts, you will understand that the aim is not just about, black, but it's about Africa. And Africa is multicolored, Africa is multicultural, Africa is multilingual. And I think that is so important. But Africa, because of that diversity, has an incredible, incredible story to tell. And I think that is the aim of Molo Molo. The aim of Molo Molo is to try and to bring out the diversity, and the principles that goes with it is about mindset change, self-development change, having a different view of the future, a different view of your past, a different view of the present, so that you're able to be a better person in order to understand those stories, in order to tell your own story, and together really building communities through technology. And I think that is the aim of Molo Molo, and hopefully it's a fresh look into podcasting, where it's going to be a mixture of really deep research on specific mental health issues, specific technology issues, where we go deeper, right? So it's coming, just wait. We will have different kind of, podcasts where we go really deep into some technologies and make it really fun at the same time. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is just storytelling. I love telling stories. I love hearing people's stories. I mean, I've had the privilege of interviewing such amazing, amazing people with incredible lives. I think of my interview with Mr. Kimeng. It was Gilbert. It was an amazing interview on his resilience through cancer, and how he managed to overcome it. But his understanding that all of that means that he has a mission. All of that means that he has to give back. He's the reason why he's alive is because he still is not finished with the mission of giving back, and that's amazing to think. So many different people that I've interviewed up to this point. We're on episode number 9, which is really exciting, and so we are definitely more invigorated to really get going. Just by the way, disclaimer: when I say we, I mean my wife. in terms of team, she is just someone I bounce off ideas on. She's my checker in terms of just how I look, certain things I should change. But the whole process of creation, believe it or not, is all on me and my assistant called ChatGPT. So in case you're wondering, how do I get these videos out? How do I get the audio out? How do I get the editing? How do I get the visual effects? How do I get the sound? How do I get the the motion graphics? How do I get the publishing and the social media marketing and just everything around it, and ensuring that people are aware and in and of course up to date? It's numero uno right here. So it's tough, it's not easy, but at the same time it's fulfilling because it is about something that's more important than just me and my comfort. It's really about giving a platform and building a platform where authenticity, but also high standards of laissez-faire, which means high standard of doing what you need to be doing, and also just giving a platform for people to really have a safe place to talk about their lives within the context of the incredible continent that we all love and we all want to see succeed. And it's really just that is what Molo Molo is trying to achieve. So it's a mission way beyond my own personal view, and I have incredible plans which I hope I'll have some people come on board. But the whole point is the mission for me is clear. It's just about mindset change as we tell stories of incredible champions and people who are really in love with the beautiful continent called Africa and believe in its potential to do amazing things for the rest of the world. Okay, so I think I've given a bit of, I think I've given enough of what Molo Molo is about. And now I will see where we are in terms of guests. Let's have a look. All right. I see. Is there anybody on the chat? Not yet. Let's see on LinkedIn Live. Okay. I think we're still good. Okay. All right. So nobody's online yet. I think we are. I'm not so sure if people are not finding the link. Okay. Let's have a look. So we've got quite a few things I want to talk about today. And if I don't get I have a few questions that I would like to share, right? So I think some of the questions might potentially already be answered through these questions. Look at my cup. I've got a, hey. By the way, funny story. When I moved into this place here in Munich, that was actually an ex Lilium, an ex colleague's place, and there's the whole story behind it. He left some cutlery and crockery for me, including these plastic cups that his children used. And guess what it looks like, some of them. And this is, look at you see how the elephant kind of changes? Isn't that so isn't that awesome? So my son uses it, but I love using this cup because yeah, it obviously reminds me of, great safaris. Look at that giraffe changing. Isn't that cool? And yeah, so it was really, really cool. There's the hippo. And yeah, so it was, I love this cup. So, and but yeah, so we got a you know three key things I would like us to deal with in terms of questions. Potentially, some of you might have some questions based on the episode of last week. And the live thing is all about just, no formalities. Hopefully, I don't wander off too much, but the idea is to just talk about some of the things that the episode of last week potentially didn't go into too much detail of. Okay, so let's try and tackle a few things. So One of the questions that came up, at least that I think is worth answering, is how do you prepare for an interview, especially in the tech industry, right? Um, I mean, I've been in the tech industry. Let's digress a bit. What is tech, right? I think a lot of people have a misconception of tech. What is tech? Yeah, I mean, if some of you have their own opinion on what tech is, you're more than welcome to answer. I'm going to put it on the chat. What is tech? To some of you. So there are no bad answers. Yeah. So I think um, it's very important to kind of have that answer, or at least have that in mind, because it does give a kind of clarity of what Molo Molo is trying to achieve, but also who is Molo Molo for, or at least the type of stories that are relevant in on this podcast and on this channel, right? I mean, I think Molo Molo is becoming more of a channel than just a simple podcast, because we do want to get into science or technology education and technology ethics, which is all about kind of the mindset of how to use technology, but also the ethical and moral part of what should be the impact of a technology with respect to its community. So, what is tech? Technology essentially is an applied science, right? It's it's something that science, by definition, is through observation, right? So you observe the very things around you and try to make sense of its relationships, both on a quantum level and on a macro level. But technology is the application of those observations that have now become scientifically proven, that allows us to leverage that for daily or common use, right? Now, I'm paraphrasing, but you can Google what technology is, but that's essentially it. It's an applied science. So engineering is an applied science, which means engineering on its own is a incubator for technology. Architecture is an incubator for technology, because there is as an applied science to architecture, and the list goes on. So its technology is a tool based on that was developed based on certain principle that came from a scientific method, and that for me is very important, because the hammer is a technology. There was, even though it was by observation, which by itself is a science, observation that a metal object that is highly dense can essentially deform another object that is not as dense, is a definition of a hammer with the leverage of the stick that holds the metal piece, that gives you that that force, and over a lever arm, which gives you a moment and allows you to apply even bigger force. It's a bunch of scientific observation that allowed us to generate an applied science that is a technology in simple form, i.e., a hammer. A typewriter is a technology. A pen, ink pen, is a technology. And there's fluid dynamics in an ink pen that talks about buoyancy, or at least not buoyancy. There's a term for it. If you know the term for the capillary effect, i.e., the retention, water retention. I'm probably doing the service to trying to explain the different fluid dynamics or specific mechanics of a pen. But the point I'm making is that the scientific observation regarding ink, regarding its ability to write on paper, its ability to set on paper permanently, and the ability to produce plastic that will remain in its form, whether hot or cold, are all scientific experiments through observation that has led to a tool for common use, and an ink pen is a technology. That's very important to understand. So the basis of tech is really at that foundation level. Of course, tech nowadays is really seen as, this grandeur, AI, and so forth, but still, it's a tool. It's a tool. And that's why tech ethics is so important, because how do you use the tool? What are some of the things you should use the tool? And why did I digress? I digressed because with that, it allows one to figure out how do I how do I apply myself to get jobs for these types of companies that have these types of tech. So it is quite important for all of us to understand that technology is exactly that. Technology is to its simplest form exactly that. Okay, so back to my question. How does one prepare for a tech job? And this is a very broad question, right? It's incredibly broad, and I'm sorry to potentially do this because every single tech firm or tech company is completely different, and it should be, right? Because it's from a tech or modern tech, I should say. I think it's probably a better way of kind of qualifying what tech is or what is tech perceived to be nowadays. Modern tech, i.e., things that are at the forefront of applied science, AI, digitization, 5G, and so forth. A lot of these technologies, what they are, or tech companies, what they are looking for is, let me just stop here and wonder. I think quite a few people are trying to get in. I'm not so sure if there's something that I'm doing wrong. Let me just pause a little bit. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Yeah, so basically, those who are trying to get in as part of the show, please just refresh and re-enter the studio. That's essentially what it's saying to me here. So I think I saw a Homoto trying to get in, a Prosperity trying to get in. Please try and refresh. Don't have too many Riverside tabs open, and that should be that. If you still, unfortunately, if you still experience a problem, yeah, I'm not so sure how if I can take some questions via. Yeah, I can take some questions via LinkedIn Live or YouTube Live. So those who are not able to get in but still want to be part of the conversation, please go on to the Molo Molo African Tech Stories channel, either on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and we should be live on either of them. And fundamentally, you should be able to see the questions that are posed, but also you should be able to get your questions answered there if you post your questions. Okay, all right, cool. So let's get back to what I was talking about. Essentially, what was posing the question regarding how do you prepare for a tech interview, right? Essentially, and that is, in my view, quite an important question to answer. So the very first thing one needs to remember is a tech company is looking for an alternative. That's very important. Um, Hello, Prosperity. Are you there? Just give me a second so that okay, she's dropped again. All right, no problem. Yeah, guys, join. If you don't have the link, I'll post the link again. Actually, on either platforms. Let me do it very quickly. So let me do it on here. If you want to join here, that's on Google Live and on LinkedIn Live. I will do it right now, and it is on this tab. And if you want to join, you can join right there. So all good. Okay, so what was I saying? I was saying that essentially a tech company is looking for an alternative. What do I mean by an alternative? I mean that uh, the worst thing that one can think about in terms of mindset when going for an interview for a tech company is this is just a 9 to 5 job. Why am I saying that? Especially from an African perspective, right? Now, let me try and give a bit of context. This is very general, and usually, these comments are general, right? And you have to filter them according to your circumstance and according to the context that you're living in and so forth. But generally speaking, as an African person, whether you grew up overseas within an African household or not, there's always been a very large emphasis on safety net, a very large emphasis on find a safe career, find something, and it doesn't apply just to African countries, apply to usually immigrant countries, immigrant cultures, specifically if that family is a minority wherever they're staying and within their own society or community, right? So that could also be it. So safety net is very important, and safety net usually is got the context of poverty, right? It's got the context of whether it was your father or your mother or your grandfather or your uncle, whatever the case may be, really struggle to make ends meet, really struggle to have an advancement on their future and the future of their children and the people that they love. So safety net was always something that was preached and something that was spoken of and something that was encouraged to say, hey, don't become an artist or don't become I don't know, a comedian. And I mean, if you've watched Trevor Noah, the comedian, you will know that's one of the biggest things he talks about is he struggled to believe that he could be or to make comedy a career because he grew up in an environment where safety net from the context of war was so important. So, but what does safety net means? It means it's a safe thing. It's a safe job. It's something that you feel that, man, I want to work for a big firm. I don't want to work for something that, will rock the boat too much. I want to feel like I have almost in a way without saying it's security for the next 5 to 10 years without even saying it. But also you want a sense of acceptance through that safety net. And unfortunately, when I say that a tech company is looking for an alternative, they're looking for almost the opposite of that mindset. They're looking for someone who's willing to take risks. They're looking for someone who's willing to leave everything behind and just, work towards a bigger vision beyond themselves. They're looking for someone who wants to think outside the box and forget convention and really take the mantle almost individually and really, in a way, show your individuality through your work on a day to day. And it's important for all of us and those who are listening and want to learn in terms of, how do I stand out when it comes to interviews with tech companies? That's exactly what they're looking for. So what does that mean? Maybe I'm just blabbing away, but what does that mean? And the thing is, this is very important. It means that your ability to think about how to prepare, it's got a lot to do with leaving the traditional questions behind. What are some of the traditional questions? Traditional questions would be, what does your retirement package look like? Who cares? It's a tech company. You shouldn't be thinking about retirement package. Another very good question that you should leave behind. Do you pay for overtime? Please don't ever ask that question if you're going for an interview with a tech company, because the perception it gives is that Hey, when it's time to go, it's time to go. And if you want me to stay extra, boss, you must pay me. And that is almost taboo in any tech company, including some big companies, right? And to be fair, even some big companies really frown upon that. That already at an interview, you already want to know whether there's some level of payment when it comes to overtime. It's like, hey, this guy, this woman, she doesn't know. She doesn't know what she's getting herself into. So those are some traditional questions that you should leave the traditional aside. So what does that mean? If you leave those aside, so what should you adopt? You should adopt the following. You should adopt the fact that knowing about the company and knowing about the company's industry is almost a must. Now, I'm not saying, and let me explain what does that mean. Let's just take Amazon, for example, right? Amazon is an incredible master at hiring. I've never worked for Amazon, so I've only heard and I've only seen. To be fair, I've gone through a few interviews with them. Uh, it wasn't great. It wasn't for me. But Amazon is a master at hiring. Why? Because they have mastered the art of appeal. They've mastered the art of, and to be fair, they're so big that they can do that. But they've mastered the art of appeal in a sense that they they really sweeten the carrot, right? They really sweeten the carrot in a sense that you are you feel like you're part of such a big vision. You're such a kind of you're I mean you're one out of, I think, what is Amazon's workforce numbers now? I don't know, 150,000, probably more. I'm probably lying. It's probably a lot more, like 200, 300,000 around the world. So you are part of an amazing workforce, but yet they've managed to make each one feel, to a large degree, individual and special, to a large degree, right? It's not all Amazon places are like that, but essentially that is and why do I bring that up? Because one of the things that I'm talking about in terms of what should you prepare for is you should be able to realize the competitors of Amazon are important to the individual. Why? Because it means that are almost you understand the industry. And if you understand the industry, you'll also be able to understand how to navigate through the industry. And that is so important about that already through your interview, because it shows that you have a sense of care for making Amazon better. And I'm using Amazon in this example, but it's important. It applies to all other industries. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean you need to be an expert of the market for each company that you go for an interview for. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that you need to at least have some level of understanding of the competitors that you can bring up to the interview to show that you are willing to make your future company, which you're now interviewing for, stand out above the rest. That is not traditional, right? That is not traditional at all. That is thinking ahead. That is thinking in future tense, and that is something that is commendable, but also that is something that is sought after. Tech companies love people who understand what it means to help the company differentiate apart from its competitors. They absolutely love it. They almost like, because there's not enough of those people around. There aren't. Many people just think about the job and the company and what can I learn about the company, but they forget that the one thing the company wants as a tech company is to be differentiable to other companies that they are competing with. And if you're able to understand the game, you're able to be a key player. Okay, so I've rambled on. I think hopefully it makes sense. This is one key thing, right? I'm not saying it's all that it is, but it is a key thing. Okay, now Another thing that I think when it comes to preparing for an interview with a tech company is don't sweat the big stuff. So, what do I mean by that? A traditional company generally puts a lot of emphasis on looks. As a small tech, or generally a tech company, modern tech, as I said, puts a lot of more emphasis on know-how. So what? And let me give you an example of exactly what happened to me. One thing I didn't say in the previous podcast, and this is going to be quite an interesting story. So when, of course, that whole failure happened, and it was really tough, right? So I explained, and my inferiority complex really kicked in, and it was really tough. But at the same time, it the interview I had with Lilium also happened while I was in Cameroon and by my village with my father. And but throughout that time, one thing I didn't say is how did I have the interview, right? I'm in the middle of nowhere. Just remember, and I've given context. And if you haven't seen the previous episode, please watch it. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I live in a mud house into a large extent. But thank goodness I had 4G Wi-Fi, 4G network, which is amazing, right? You'd be thinking, what, in the middle of nowhere, mud hard 4G network? Hey, priorities, no? Clearly, Africa. Priorities in terms of Wi-Fi, 4G versus you living in a mud house. so, so that already tells you. But I mean, most of you know this, right? If you're from Africa, you will be living in a shack, and yet you have DSTV or you have a satellite TV. Priorities. Anyway, it wasn't to my own doing. I just took advantage of the 4G network. What did that mean? It meant that I was able to have full-blown video interviews using my phone. I didn't have a laptop at the time, or not with me. And the interviews were done with my phone. I'll put my phone on a little kind of bar stool, prop it up, so I didn't have a tripod, so prop it up nicely, whatever. And I use my earphones, wired earphones, plug it to my phone, and that's how we'll have video interviews. Of course, I'll buy the airtime, but that's it. Now, from a traditional perspective, they will want to see you well done up and whatever. But the Lilium interview, and I want to say this because it's important. The Lilium interview, it happened in my father's village during the day. I remember the very first or the second interview, I can't remember. And I remember very distinctively having to excuse myself from the interview to shut the door because the hens and the rooster and the chicks were going around, because you have wild chickens, wild poultry moving around, right? Because these are wild fed, organic fed poultry, and they were making no, and I had to make an excuse and say, wait, I'm sorry, yeah, I can't hear you properly. There are chickens, making noise, and it became such a such a funny story when I arrived in Munich, when I retold that story to a lot of my colleagues. But why is that important? Because it's not it's not about finding a perfect environment. When it comes to tech companies, they're not after the big stuff, the well done up, the background, and you feeling like you've got it all together. What they're really after is what can you provide to them? How are you fundamentally different? And of course, there was something that I did and the confidence potential that I had that allowed them to feel that way. But the point I'm making here is that don't sweat the big stuff. It's the small stuff, i.e., the things you think it's small in terms of your confidence on the subject matter, your ability to know your stuff. That is crucial, absolutely, and that I will not deny. If you do not know your stuff, you know? If you apply for a data analytics job or an chemical engineering job at a tech firm, and I mean by tech firm, I mean those who are haven't been around for the last, okay, maybe Amazon is an exception. But in general, most tech firms, as we call modern tech firm, haven't been around for more than 20, 25 years, except for the big conglomerates like, your obvious Boeing, Airbus. But actually, let me requalify my statement. What I mean by tech firm, I honestly mean those who are clearly are in the innovation space from a modern tech perspective and not just churning out the same products every single year. And those guys are not really after you looking all together. They're really after you having a sense that you know your stuff. And you knowing your stuff, meaning that you have to take into account getting to the details. I think I mentioned that in the podcast episode of last week. I said, already. I mean, I wanted that job, right? The one where I could work in the with CubeSats, with satellites in the space industry. I wanted the job. So what did I do? I went onto the internet and I studied space dynamics. I downloaded an online book. Like I said, I was in a village. It's not like I had a library to go to. I downloaded stuff. I only had my phone. I downloaded stuff, went through, space dynamics, did some equations, got to understand. Of course, I already had a background from aerospace, but aeronautical engineering and aerospace in terms of, or astronomical engineering is astronomics is not the same. So space dynamics is very different. So I had to dig deep and show that I could do this stuff, or at least convince myself that I could, or fundamentally see that this is not something for me. So the small stuff, the detail, that's where the devil lies, right? As they say. And 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 it's important because even if this is very important, so even if your interview is not yet about technical things, i.e., you haven't reached that stage of technical, it's incredibly important when you go for an interview with a tech company to at least already show an aptitude of knowing the technical terms that are applicable in that industry. Let me repeat that. Even if you are still at the very first kind of HR blah 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 stage where they're trying to suss you out in terms of alignment, it's important, it's imperative that you already give some emphasis on your knowledge of technical terms that are applicable to that industry. For me, it's a game changer because you're not waiting for the question. You are anticipating what they would need to know when they give feedback to whoever they need to give feedback to, specifically the technical manager or whoever will be doing the technical interview or deciding whether you are worth their time in doing a technical interview. Okay, now that we've got a few people online, I see Homoto, Prosperity, Mabuza. Welcome, guys. Thank you for coming. Hopefully, this is valuable for most of you. But yeah, I really wanted to really give some perspective on interviews and what does it mean to have basically some level of knowledge when it comes to interviews, when it comes to just understanding what it means to have some leverage over the interviews when it comes to tech companies. Now, of course, there's a different aspect when it comes to the process or the procedure of of having an interview with an international company that will require you or who could allow you to move overseas or to another country. That's on its own another conversation, which is also important. I also had to do a lot of homework there. To be fair, I really had a bit of background on that, but at the same time, there was a lot of things I didn't know. Right, that company that eventually rejected my application, I did a whole lot of background check for obvious reasons, right? I mean, I'm married. I've got a kid. I need to figure out, what does that mean? Living standards, schooling system. Is it English or not? My wife, can she, would she like it, blah, blah, blah. So there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of compensation. How do you know what to ask for when it gets there? It never gets there the first interview, but when it does get there, or if it does get there first interview, do you have a number in mind? If you don't have a number in mind, or if it's too high, they will think you didn't do enough of your research, or you just don't know what the interview is about. And if it's too low, they potentially could take advantage of you going forward, which could set you back for many years to come. So, all right, this is really. I thought we should kind of focus on this. This is, for me, is incredibly important. I hope you're finding value in this. If you are finding value, please, just let me know. What does it resonate with you? I'm gonna have an open mic now. I know most of you have your camera off. I see there's an issue here. Mabuza Riverside is asking you to close all other Riverside tabs on the web browser. If you can do that, I think that will really help you, but also potentially help the streaming from your end to see and to participate. So Mabuza, if you can do that, that would be great. Okay, so I've already mentioned quite a few things. Can I see Homot is on the line? I see Prosperity is on the line, and you don't have to show your face, but you potentially will. If you have questions, please you can already ask them directly, right? And I'll be trying to answer them as I talk along. And of course, there's other things I would like to talk about, but I do think I want to pause here and I mean, at the end of the day, it's a Q&A, right? So, Komotso or Prosperity, is there any specific questions that you may have that I can already assist, or at least we can already discuss? You can just unmute and we can just converse. Hi, Prosperity. Oh, okay. Am I jumping the gun here, or are we still silent? I'm just waiting.
Hi, Mala Mala. I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to the aerospace industry here in South Africa, I,
Mm-hmm.
for one, wanted to venture into that soon after grade 12, but only vets offered that. So, with a mechanical engineering degree, right,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible for me to still apply for aeronautical jobs, and in which companies here in South Africa can
Mm-hmm.
I apply for such maybe vacation work? Because
Mm-hmm.
currently I am still a university student. So in terms of vacation work, w- where can I apply for specifically in aeronautical or aerospace
Mm-hmm.
internships or vacation work? I
Okay,
don't know if
thanks.
that's clear.
No, do you mind if I ask a couple of questions, Prosperity?
Yeah, yes, you can go ahead, please.
So what year are you in?
I am doing my third year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're doing your third year. Which university?
University of Cape Town.
University of Cape Town. And you're doing a mechanical engineering degree. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's a good question. So let me try and answer it. Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, I know the South African market very well. I mean, I grew up there essentially and did my all my tertiary education there. So, the short answer to your question is yes. Yes to what? Yes, yes, you can definitely venture into aerospace with a mechanical degree, 100%. Yes, you can definitely find a job in aerospace or aeronautical engineering with a mechanical engineering degree, and yes, there are companies that would take you as a mechanical engineer that are involved in the aeronautical or aerospace industry. And this is also a very important thing I would like to qualify for those who are watching and those who will be watching this in the future. The difference between an aeronautical engineer and a mechanical engineer is very little. To those who are studying aeronautical engineering or aerospace engineering, you may think, that's not true. Well, let's break it down. It's very little. Why do I say it's very little? Because aeronautical engineer, what is it? It's you're studying or you're working with things that are mechanically made. Okay, aeroplanes, they are mechanically made. You're working with I don't know, a wind tunnel or CFD, computational fluid dynamics. Most of it, or to a large extent, you will be studying it. You'll be studying fluid dynamics as a mechanical engineer. So, air is a fluid, water is a fluid. A mechanical engineer already has the base or the foundation for understanding what are the different principles of how things move either in air or in water. That's essentially what fluid dynamics is. So a mechanical engineer already has the basis. So why do I say that? Because and this is a misconception I can kill today, but I've tried to kill that misconception with different private conversations. There is actually no difference in terms of prospect, in terms of career, between an aeronautical engineer and a mechanical engineer. Why do I say that? Because a mechanical engineer, in actual fact, could say that they're to an advantage in a way, right? Not really, but in a way, because they've got a much broader set of skills that allows them to be more marketable in the workplace or in the market. So, and this is to the advantage of a mechanical engineer, mainly because a mechanical engineer learns a lot broader skills than an aeronautical engineer. For example, if you were to study at Wits, or I think you can now study aeronautical engineering. I think you should be able to still study aeronautical engineering in Stellenbosch, although it's not easy to get in, as far as I know. And I think also you are able to do a postgraduate, i.e., honors, masters, and potentially more at Tukkies, Pretoria University. Tukkies is probably the latest one out of Wits and Stellenbosch. Uh, Maybe there are more since my time there, but those are the two and now three with Pretoria that offers at least up to postgrad a degree in aeronautical slash aerospace. So in terms of vacation, this is quite a tough one, and the reason why I say it's a tough one is because oftentimes, just because you're not working in a company that its products are directly an airplane, doesn't mean you're not working in an aviation or aerospace industry. Let me explain. For example, you could be working, let's take a good example. Like, you could be working for a company that makes, I don't know, it makes uh, seats. Okay, what I mean is, it makes the seats for a commercial airline, like commercial plane that you see on TV or you've flown yourself, right? That takes you from Cape Town to Joburg or whatever the case may be, carries 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 people. You're making seats for them, those seats that you sit on. Very complicated, but it's seats nonetheless. Now, the principles are mostly mechanic, right? It's CAD design, it is stress analysis, and so forth. But the end product is to install it inside an airplane. So fundamentally, you are working in an aviation industry. And this is very important to understand because it's not just about designing an airplane that is required, it's also about the inside of the airplane that qualifies you as working in an aerospace industry. And the reason why this is important is because the regulations and what you need to learn and the specialized nature of those seats, given that they need to be handled with care, they need to be able to be adaptable from this airplane to that airplane, fundamentally means you are learning about the aviation and you are contributing to the aviation industry. The reason I'm bringing this up is because when you think about it that way, all of a sudden the different types of companies you can work for increases dramatically. Now, I'm not saying that because of that you should just take any company that somehow has something to do with aviation. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is I'm just trying to requalify or reframe kind of, where you can work. And but having said that, let me try and give you some tangible companies that does aerospace development, i.e., the actual you'll be designing on paper airplanes or missiles or UAVs and so forth. So the following companies on top of my head, yeah. If you want to write it down, or you can we can also talk afterwards if you want. Prosperity. There is Denel, right? I'm sure you heard of Denel, Denel. Denel. This is probably the biggest company in South Africa that is publicly owned. It had its own issues. I worked for them for many years. Denel is probably the biggest aerospace and defense company in South Africa currently. There is a company called Milcor, like milk, and OR at the end. Milk, Milkor, Milcor, I think it's called. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me just double check. Yeah, exactly. Milcor. So it's MIL. Yeah, that's right. And then there's a company called Aerosud, like aeronautical, but Zud, like SUD, Aerosud. That's also in Centurion. The aerospace company, and they are the company that I was talking about. Their biggest contract is to make seats. They've been making them for the past 20 years. just just letting you know, aerospace manufacturing. And I'm laughing it off, but it's a big business and it's very serious. But the point is, they make aerospace worthiness, aerospace compliant seats. Um, so I've mentioned Denel, I've mentioned Milko, I've mentioned Aerosud. Let me see. There's another one that I forgot. I'll tell you now. It is. I've completely forgot what it's called. There's another one in Centurion. I'll remember it, right? But those are the three kind of main ones, and then there's a lot of smaller ones that are either in airports. I mean, smaller airports when I mean by smaller airports, I mean not OR Tambo. They are almost at the fringes, like in Lanseria, if you've heard of Lanseria. I don't know which other small airports is in Cape Town, but I know Johannesburg, like Lanseria Airport, and they make kind of smaller airplanes for private customers, where you also learn about aviation, but it's not entirely kind of an engineering firm. They just specialize in specific airplanes and in a way retrofit, if not have a small scale design team. Um, does that answer your question, Prosperity? Does that help you?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you so much. You've given me a whole lot of information, and I'm gonna research more on all of this. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm really glad, and all the best. Hey, I mean, I know it's not easy. I've been there. I know it's not easy, so all the best. And but yeah, just keep it up. And of course, this is really what this show is about, right? Is to answer questions. and also to figure out where can I unblock some of the things that people have questions on. Okay, is there any other questions? Homoto, I know you're online. I don't want to, you know, pin you, but I don't know what. Do you have any comments? What do you think? Is there any specific question that I can answer? You can just unmute and talk, and feel free, guys. Really, hey. I know it feels, how can I say, daunting. We are live. Yay, 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 yay. YouTube, right? But hey, man, it is what it is. One thing I've been taught is that nobody really cares. You think they do, but they don't. So, is there any other questions that I could potentially already answer before I kind of talk about my last point? Anything else? Let's see on the chat while you guys are making a decision. Okay. So there's nothing on YouTube Live. Let me have a look on LinkedIn Live. Everything is live. Yeah, it's very daunting. Just give me a second. Let's see. LinkedIn Live. Okay. Nope. Okay, it's all good. I mean, if there aren't any specific questions, Homoto, are you sure you don't have any questions before I close off? This is your chance. All right. So let me then carry on. Yeah. Let me try and kind of sum up um, by making one specific point that I think is quite important when it comes to some of the questions that could have easily come up from last week's episode, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this is a question and answer. Thank you, Prosperity, for kind of bringing up some questions. And like I said, if you have any other questions, please unmute yourself, and I'll be able to answer them. Okay, so the last thing I wanted just to quickly touch on, which I think is in a way um, important from the aspect of giving a bit more detail of last week's episode, is the following. Oftentimes, we cut us we cut ourselves short, right? And I've been there, especially as African children. We feel like this, our circumstance, where we come from, what we know, maybe you think of your colleagues, not colleagues, but your fellow students that you attend with. You're not to the same level of knowledge or the same level of they seem like they've got everything together. They know, they're always on time, or they feel like you're always rushing to finish assignments. Or even if you're working, you feel like you don't really know where you're going. You don't really know what you should be doing. You don't really know what's my next career move. Should I study further? I don't really feel like it. How do I get more money, my salary? How come this guy seems like he's earning more than me? Da, da. and 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 you can easily carry all of that to an interview through the form of through and it's usually displayed by you being very timid, or by you really thinking that you don't deserve more than what's coming to you. The reason why it's important is because that's what inferiority complex does, right? It makes you feel like you don't belong to the discussion. It makes you feel like, yo, I'm just happy. I got I got this person to listen to me, or I got this company to at least accept my interview, my application, and I'm so grateful, and I want to do anything, and I will do anything, and just hire me, please. And we come across very needy or very desperate, and it's got a lot to do with just our background and everything that we have in our minds. The only way to get around it, unfortunately, and this is it's gonna be, it's just the hard truth, and I mentioned it earlier. The only way to get around this feeling of awkwardness of not knowing whether it's to really do your research, do the work, guys, do the work. You really want to have if you are not yet in a job and you're still in varsity, and you think about those companies prosperity, when I think about, you know, the likes of Denel, Aerosuit, Milcor, there's another company, I alwast forget their name, Paramount, there you go, Paramount, like parachute, instead of the shoot, mount, Mount, Paramount, there you go, they're also in Centurion, Paramount. um I don't know why this thing keeps on falling. So you got to do your research, okay? You, whether you're working or you're a student and you want to, it's a first job or it's your 10th job or it's your second job, and you know you want to change, especially when you want to do a career change, right? Career change meaning that you want to go from, maybe you were, I don't know, doing engineering in the mining industry, now you want to go into, I don't know, you know, IT and digitization. Of course, still engineering, like, you know, engineering, IT engineering, and so forth. But completely different industry. You gotta do the work. You gotta do the work, and it doesn't mean you gotta go for short courses and, you know, go back to school. No, you just gotta mean you gotta know what you're talking about. Preparation meets opportunity for success. That's essentially what that means. It means for you to be successful, the opportunity gotta be met with preparation. So it's not by chance that I was able to get my job or to have a job moving to Germany from a rural village. It's not by chance. It's I did the homework, you know. I mean, of course, you know, I mean, one cannot say it's all up to me, right? I think at the end of the day, one has to give credit to where credit is due, and I'm incredibly blessed. So I cannot take that for granted. But you seed what you sow, right? It's biblical, man. No, you sow what you seed. Sorry, but I said you seed what you sow. You sow what you seed. Hey, it's tough. Um, and what I mean by seeding, I mean the work. I mean, you should have done the work. That's it. The work. So my encouragement, and I'm gonna leave it like that for all of you. And you can think about it. What I mean by work, that's the amazing thing about technology within an African context. Technology is blind. Cell phone technology, you having an iPhone or a Samsung S Mang Mang, S20, S21 in the middle of the village completely levels the playing field when it comes to accessing markets all over the world. And that is the power of technology, but it can only happen if your mindset is about getting to the table, you know, participating in the discussion prepared. You cannot wing it and see what sticks. It just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And I know sometimes we are desperate. We just want a job, or we want to move my job, or, you know, I haven't gotten vacation work yet, right? You can feel desperate, but you've gotta say to yourself, rather me having 2 interviews than 10, and let those 2 interviews, I'm prepared. I'll rather even say, sometimes I even say no to an interview. I mean, now I have the luxury of saying no, right? I mean, so I'm not in the same position. But the point I'm making still stands, is that you've got to be prepared. You've got to feel that you are prepared. You know exactly, like I mentioned, right? It's a tech industry. You know that you are prepared about the competitors of that industry. You are prepared about understanding what you need to be, what are you going to be contributing, what is your value, and you're also prepared to do whatever it needs to do to get into the door and really blow people's minds away through your work ethic and your ability to learn on the go. That is what you need to be able to convey from the get go, from minute one of the interview, if you really want to stand out. And I think that's important. So that's really what I want to leave with today in terms of question and answers. Those are some of the questions I had after I even watched myself, which is creepy. Watching myself, thinking about questions that I would be asking myself. But it's important, right? It's important to kind of take that into account, take what it means to prepare for an interview, what it means to have the right mindset, what it means to overcome failure, what it means to really sit comfortable with failure because you know that you did your best and it just wasn't you, right? I mean, that's what the episode says. It just wasn't me, or at least that's what the guy said, right? He said, okay, well, something happened and it's not your fault. Sorry. Okay, well, I did my best. Let me try and do the same for the next one. And the next one worked, which in this case, I'm talking about this company I'm working for now, Lilium. So that's really what I wanted to share with most of you. Thank you so much for those who have. I see some people were kind of listening, watching the stream on YouTube. I'm assuming some of them. I'm not too sure if LinkedIn Live is even a thing. I'm trying it. Let's see how it goes, but at least that's happening. And for those who have joined me, Homozo, Prosperity, thank you so much. I know some guys dropped in and out. So we're going to try this again. After each and every single episode, we'll try and have a Q&A session where we spend an hour and a bit, just open mic. I will try and address some of the questions I have for myself watching the episode. And of course, especially when we have other guests, it's not just about me, right? That would be weird. But when we have other guests that I interview, there'll also be some Q&As, potentially not with the guests, but at least some questions that the guest couldn't answer that I can on the guest's behalf, and we will have this open mic as well. So I want to say thank you again for today's episode. Thank you for those who have come, who have decided to join me on this kind of experiment of different live streams all over the internet. Thank you for those who have participated. Thank you for the questions. This is Molo Molo African Tech Stories. My name is Dr. Paulin Kantue, and together we will be discovering the fascinating stories of African tech champions and innovators that are shaping the future of the African continent. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And until next time, ciao.